Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this broadcast about friction today. We're just kind of giving our 2-minute warning here. We're going to start the presentation here very shortly. Sit tight. Thank you. All right, we're doing a quick sound check. Just one moment while we check the sound and make sure that everybody can hear this correctly. Just doing one more quick sound check, and we'll be ready to roll. All right. Just wanted to check one thing real quick. We were having some issues with the sound here. There's a little Q&A panel in your top left. If you're hearing double, as in an echo or some sort of double signal, would you let us know there? We think we've resolved it, but if you hear it, let us know, and we'll be starting the presentation here in about 30 seconds. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. We're really excited to discuss some of the factors that eliminate or can eliminate friction from our donation pages. We know that friction is one of the most powerful influences that actually turns your donors away every day. People are coming to your landing page, your donation page right now, and elements of friction are keeping them from giving. So we're excited that you've joined us to find out how we can eliminate those elements. We're going to have two parts of the presentation here. First off, we're going to hear from Tim Kucheriak, who's going to walk through just a little bit of education about friction, what causes it, what we can do to eliminate it, and then we're actually going to do some live optimization. We've had some brave souls submit their landing pages for review, and we've selected a couple of these. So we're really excited to walk through the review portion and talk about these landing pages, and you'll kind of see how it works in real time. Just to answer a few questions that we commonly get. Number one, we're going to make a video recording of this available. Also, we're going to send out all the experiments that you see. We'll send out links after the call. And we want your questions. If you have questions, you'll see up here there's a little box up in the top left that says ask a question. You can click that and it'll give you a little space here. You've got to hit send. You can't just hit enter. So make sure you hit that blue send button. And when we get to the live optimization portion, we're going to ask you, what you think could be optimized on the page to reduce friction. So we'd love to get your responses there. But if you have any questions, we'll get to as many as we can. Really wanted to, you guys may have seen this email that went out just right before this. I wanted to talk about this versus that. It's kind of a cool new thing we've been working on here at Next After. So it's going to be a weekly email that goes out, and you'll see experiment results and get to test your optimization prowess. So we showed this experiment from the Heritage Foundation's main donation page, and we're doing a couple of things here with this experiment. We're trying to reduce friction by reducing the number of choices. It's cognitive friction and decision friction, and then we're also trying to increase overall revenue. So increase conversion, increase revenue, reducing choices. So we talked, this is experiment 245 from the library. We had this control. The Heritage Foundation's the main donation page had 7 options starting at $5, and then recurring giving was pre-selected by default. That's why you see the smaller numbers there. We developed a treatment asking if recurring giving was too high of an ask initially. So the treatment has the identical copy, only has 3 options. They're limited to 3, $50 is the default value. And we have the one-time gift selected by default. So we're taking a different tactic there with fewer options, and we're selecting one time. So the question here was which donation array prompts the greatest revenue per visitor. You can see the results here. We had about 66% of the people who answered this correctly. The 3-button test produced a 5.5 increase in conversion rate and a 48.5% increase in average gift for a combined cumulative 56.7% increase in revenue, which had someone email us and ask if that included lifetime value from the recurring donors, because the control rather does have a recurring donation pre-selected, and yes, that did. We took the average number of months, multiplied the gift times that to make sure that we were being fair on revenue. This tells us that the more decisions you put between your donor and the actual action you're asking them to take, the more friction you introduce into your donor funnel. Thank you guys so much for playing along. In that email, there's actually a link to subscribe if you want to receive the this versus that test every week. All right, without further ado, I'm going to hand the reins here to Tim Kucheriak, who's going to walk us through understanding friction.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And just an interesting note on that treatment and that experiment that you just shared. We noticed as we were observing through the data is that most people were still continuing to make a single one-time gift, even though we had the multiple reoccurring gifts selected by default on that control. And so that's what led us to say, well, maybe that's creating friction in the process. It's requiring people to have to go through too much thinking and too much work to be able to have to go and change their intention. So great example, wonderful illustration of friction. And we're going to talk very deeply about friction today. And we have to start, as we normally start, by just talking about the online donor funnel. And for those of you who've been on these broadcasts in the past, this is probably familiar to you, this is kind of the traditional online donor funnel where we have different ways of putting traffic in the top. We like to always start with this because all of our thinking kind of evolves from this initial metaphor. And the idea is, in the traditional sense, we're trying to move people online. We're trying to move them from interest to involvement to investment. And we have been on this quest for quite some time to try to understand how do we optimize this online donor funnel? How do we get more flow through? And our quest has led us, out of the nonprofit space into the for-profit space. We're finding that there's this group based out of Jacksonville called Mech Labs, and they're doing some of the most pioneering work in the area of optimization science. They're the largest optimization institution in the world. They work with some of the largest corporations on the planet to help these organizations optimize their sales funnel. And through the course of their work, they have performed tremendous amounts of research. They've tested over 10,000 different conversion pathways. They've tested over 1 billion emails. They've recorded and analyzed over 5 million phone calls, all trying to answer one single question, which is this: why do people say yes? Why do people say yes? And their thesis is that if they can uncover the understandings and the reasons and the motivations that lead people to say yes, then they can actually engineer more yeses into a sales funnel. And we thought that that was pretty interesting, and they've actually codified the exact variables that they have observed from their research that actually leads to more people to say yes. When we first met with them, we talked to them about our funnel. They said, gosh, we love the funnel because all of marketing should be designed to move people to take action. It should be creating something that influences a decision. But the problem with the traditional funnel in its sense is that it actually distorts reality. People aren't falling in the top, they're falling out of the bottom. And that's because we're not getting 100% conversion rates or 90% conversion rates or even 50% conversion rates in most cases. We're getting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10% conversion rates, which means that most of the people are actually falling out the bottom of the funnel. So in order to get a proper perspective, we have to take this funnel and we have to flip it upside down and realize that people are not traveling down the center. Gravity, meaning the natural organic forces that exist in the marketplace, are not leading people to convert. They are leading people to fall out. And so instead of really a donor funnel, what it looks more like is a donor mountain, and there's different ways to traverse this mountain to reach the pinnacle, to reach the summit. At the summit is our macro yes, and in fundraising, obviously, our ultimate yes that we're trying to get is somebody that will give a financial gift to our organization. Well, in order to get to that macro yes, there's a series of micro yeses that take place along the journey. So, for example, if we send an email out, people first have to do what? They have to open the email, then they have to perhaps read the email, then they have to click on the email, and if they click on the email, it takes them to a landing page. And on the landing page, there's a series of content and images and copy and perhaps even videos and other illustrations that are designed to move people through these series of decisions that they must make, and perhaps they lead them to a compelling call to action to give. And if they click on the give button, maybe then they go to another page, and maybe there's a form that must be filled out in order for them to complete that process. And even as you go through the process of filling out that form, there's a series of micro decisions that are taking place. Well, we thought that that was actually pretty interesting. And so the natural question that begs is, well, what's the force that moves people through these series of micro yeses? And of course, the force is the message. The essence of marketing is messaging, right? And so then the next question that's also logical is, well, what is the force behind the message? And the essence of the message is something that Mech Labs calls the value proposition. Very simply, does the perceived value outweigh the perceived cost? And we can't just apply that at the macro level. We have to apply that to each of these individual micro yeses that take place along this communication journey. And so the whole idea of optimization is very simply, we're trying to engineer more yeses. We're trying to move the value proposition for taking an action, whatever place it falls along this inverted funnel, from cost-heavy, value-light, to value-heavy, cost-light. We're trying to tip the scale in our favor. And if you've been on this before, we've talked a lot about value proposition. I think the last one we even talked about motivation, and we've been spending a lot of the time on these first two elements of this conversion sequence. And this conversion sequence, very simply, it's just a tool that has been developed by Mech Labs, and we've adopted and used this in our practice here, and it helps us focus our attention on what are the things we need to try to optimize in our online giving experience. 4M stands for motivation, the primary factor that influences whether or not somebody says yes is their primary motivation for coming to the site. Why did they come there in the first place? What is their intention upon coming? Then the next thing, again, according to Mech Labs research, that influences the conversion is the understanding and the force of the value proposition. How forcefully are you communicating the value that's presented to the user, the impact of their gift in our context? So then we're kind of moving into these cost factors, and there's two main ones, friction and anxiety, and they kind of go hand in hand. And today we're going to focus exclusively on this cost force of friction. So in order to begin this conversation, we should probably define it. And the way that we define it as it relates to the online giving process is that friction is anything that causes psychological resistance to a given element in the online donation process, okay? So it's anything that causes psychological resistance. Remember, keep in mind, we're not optimizing landing pages. We're trying to optimize thought sequences. And these are people on the other side of the screen, and these people are very complex, and they have many different emotions. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to engineer our pages in a way that's going to reduce some of this friction. Okay, and so what I've also often found is that probably the best way to understand friction is to experience it, and we have to experience it through the eyes of the donor. So I'm going to walk through an example that I've used for many years. And this is an organization that probably many of you know. This particular sequence is no longer in existence, but this was part of a very large fundraising campaign. And the whole purpose of this microsite that was created around this fundraising campaign is to get donations, okay? So I want to make that clear. So if you came to this website with an intention of making a gift, where would you click? Well, I mean, it may take a second or two to intuitively make that decision, because there's lots of, it's a beautifully designed page. There's pictures and images, and there's all kinds of different options here. But take a second or two to locate. In the upper right-hand corner, there is a donate button. So we click on that. Then it takes us to this next step of the process, and this is where it gets a little bit confusing if I'm a donor coming to this page, especially for the very first time. Most of us, and we've looked at and analyzed IPATH analyses that suggest that most people's eyes are drawn to the main area of content. So if we look at this main column here first, the very first link I encounter says where your donations go, which is helpful, but that's not really what I want to do, is it? I want to donate. Search for a student or group, what does that mean? Looking for your page, click here. To search for your page, click here. To create a fundraising page, click here. And then my eye kind of moves then to the right, from left to right, from that main column to the next column on the right. I see a big button, sign up now to donate and ask a question. Okay, 1-800-7-FAMINE, how do I donate? Or get more info on maybe how to donate. And then there's some social links. And as I'm scanning this page, I'm getting more and more confused about what I need to do to complete my donations. Well, down here in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a little text link. And the text link says, discover more ways to help. And that is, in fact, where you need to click in order to go to the next step of the donation process. When you click that, it takes you to this page. At least now I see a button that aligns with my intent. But the problem is, how many people fell out of the funnel on step 2? So let's pretend that we're perseverance, and we're going to keep going, and we hit this now page, and we see a donate now button that aligns with my intention. I click it. It takes me now to a different website. There's this kind of moment of reorientation. Where am I at? What am I trying to do? What I have to do it? And then I say, oh yeah, $30, donate now. And then it does something kind of strange. It puts it in a shopping cart, which I start to think to myself, well, gosh, I just wanted a sponsor chat. I didn't want to buy one, but okay, I guess I need to check out. And then it says, now you need to create an account. And I fill out some information and hit continue, and I fill out more information. I hit continue, and I fill out more information, continue, and more information, continue. And I've clicked 9, 10 times. And this is the experience that I have as a donor. And if we think about it, sometimes we actually engineer these things more based on kind of programming logic as opposed to donor logic. And so the reason why that illustration I find to be very, very helpful is because it helps to point to this fact that there is a very, very specific difference between giving a gift online and buying a product online, okay? There's a very specific difference between those two things. If I go to buy a product online, I go through a process, I go through a series of steps, and then I get, the benefit later, right? The book, I go through this, process, I fill out some information, and like the book comes in the mail the next day, from Amazon. It's amazing, right? The benefit comes second when you order a product online. When you give a gift, it's a little bit different. The intangible benefit that's experienced by the donor is often something that they experience first. They've been blessed, they've been inspired, they've been compelled with a vision of how they can make a difference in somebody else's life or support an issue that they care deeply about. That intangible feeling is often paid to the donor first, and the transaction occurs second. So if we think about it through that lens, man, we've got to really think how to really eradicate this friction in our process. And I've got this little illustration that it's not scientific, but I think that this is helpful because it kind of diagrams the cognitive journey that a donor goes through. So this blue line represents the status quo. This is where your potential donors live. This is where your existing donors. This is where everybody lives, right? We live in the status quo. And the challenge, though, if I want to get somebody to give a gift, I have to move them through these three different phases. I've got to move them from interest to involvement to investment. The problem is we're down here in the status quo. So what do we need? We need an interrupter. We need something that arrests attention and moves people into that first phase of interest. And that interest builds until it reaches an engagement point. And an engagement point can be a click or an open or something where they begin to invest mental energy thinking about your cause, your issue, your organization. That involvement builds until it reaches the moment of decision. And this is where you present your ask. And when you present your ask, there's really one of two choices that a donor has. They can say, no, I don't want to give, and they return back to the status quo, and it's kind of game over for today. Or they say yes. And if they say yes, this is where they experience, that emotional climax of the transaction. This is where they're starting to receive that intangible benefit. And depending on how strong that feeling is, it's going to determine this conversion horizon. Because if it's a very intense feeling, they might be willing to kind of go through a bit more of a process. But eventually, if we make it too difficult, too cumbersome, too confusing, friction is going to return them back to the status quo, and they're going to abandon the funnel. So if you look at this, it kind of looks like that inverted funnel, right? This is the journey that a donor must go through, the cognitive journey that they go through on their way to completing a donation online. So friction is really, really critical, and we're going to talk about the couple different types of it. There's two main categories of friction that I want you to focus in on today. The first one is length friction, and the second type is difficulty friction, and we're going to look at some examples of each. The first one, field number friction, the actual number of fields or the numbers of pieces of information that you require from a donor in order for them to give a gift, that can introduce unwanted and unnecessary friction into your giving process. Another type of friction is field layout friction. When I vertically stack all of my fields on top of each other, well, man, that makes that form look really, really long. And so then the perception is, gosh, I don't know if I'm really up for this. I don't know if I have the mental energy to answer all these questions. And all these things, by the way, this is all happening on a subconscious level. Donors not even aware that they're thinking like this. This is all things that are kind of intuitive to them. But they perceive that that's a longer form than something that looks a little bit different. We'll look at an experiment that actually really focuses in on that. Decision friction. When the donor is presented with the need to make unanticipated decisions along the way. So, many times we'll have these gift designations on our giving forms. And, the thinking kind of is, well, we really want our donors to be able to personalize their gift so they can direct the gift to the areas that they're most passionate about. And so the intention is always good, but the problem is, as a donor, I might not know the difference between designation A or designation B. And so now you are forcing me to make a decision, and I might have to choose. Well, I might need to come back later and think about that. I haven't really, anticipated having to answer that question today. So decision friction. Confusion friction, like we looked at in the previous example, using insider baseball or having multiple conflicting calls to action or really kind of having more of an organization-centric communication approach can add confusion into the process. These people are not insiders. I mean, maybe some of them are, but most of them, are not thinking about your program, your fundraising program all day. They don't know it as intimately as you. So clarity trumps persuasion very much in this case. Error friction. Having cryptic errors pop up, or even having errors that don't really make sense to the donor. Not highlighting what is missing. If somebody goes to fill out a form and they miss a field, that can create friction because, I mean, how many times have you done that? You've tried to complete a form or a process. You've left out one minor thing, or maybe you have a bad character in there, and all of a sudden the form just keeps bombing and bombing and bombing. Well, if you don't know exactly what you need to do to fix it, that's going to cause some stress and some anxiety, and that's going to also lead to friction that causes people to drop out of the process. Registration friction. Now, this is one that often gets me into a little bit of a debate with some folks who say that, gosh, let's make it easier for donors the next time they come to the page so that they don't have to go through the whole process of filling out all their payment information. We can store that for them, and they just have to, go and log in with their username and password, and that's great. But the problem is that everybody has probably, 20 or 30 different passwords lingering out there. And that's because a lot of these, password requirements vary from site to site to site. And so the problem is we spend most of our time clicking on this little forgot your password link and hoping, sometimes hoping against hope, that email arrives in our inbox with the password reset notification. And if that email isn't sent right away, or if something else catches my eye as I enter in my inbox waiting to receive that, man, that's going to probably cause people to abandon the process. And so we suggest that this registration thing, which again, the intention is right. We want to make it easier for people to give, but it can often lead to unnecessary and unwanted friction. Device friction. This is becoming more and more of an issue. We've got multiple screen sizes now, don't we? I mean, we're finding more and more people are opening their emails on their mobile devices, which means that your entire web presence must be mobilized, because people can click on links in emails, especially if they're clicking on appeals and they're going to your donation form, and if they can't give a gift, if they can't discern the content without having to pinch and zoom and do all these different kind of finger moves, well, gosh, that's going to create tremendous amounts of friction. In fact, in a study that we published last year where we analyzed the online fundraising habits of 151 nonprofit organizations, we went and we actually analyzed all these organizations' giving pages, 100 of which were actually in the Chronicle 400. So these are the largest nonprofits in the world, and 84% had online donation experiences that were not optimized for mobile viewing. And so this is becoming more and more of an issue, and something that we have to be concerned about. Okay, so we looked at some different kinds of friction. So we want to spend as much time as we can today on the live optimization portion of the call. But I do want to walk through a few different experiments from our library. So this one is experiment 1007. This is one of my favorites. And this one is about trying to understand, how does the layout of a form affect friction in the donation form? And so this is an experiment we performed with one of our research partners, Carrying Bridge. Many of you are probably aware of them. They get tremendous amounts of traffic, which is great because we can learn things very, very rapidly. And out of the box, their donation form, their default kind of donation form, had all of the form fields vertically stacked on top of each other. And so the challenge was, well, we need to see if there's a way where we can optimize this form so it doesn't look as long. I mean, one simple thing we'd love to do is just take away fields, and we'll look at some experiments where we've done that, and that makes a big difference. Just by removing fields, asking for less information, makes it easier for people to complete your donation process and leads to higher conversions. But in this case, we weren't allowed to really remove any fields. All of these fields were all required. So we said, well, let's create a treatment that doesn't require less information, but it reorients the fields so that it makes the form look like it's smaller. So this treatment here has all the exact fields as the control, but the difference is that we actually we horizontally align some of the fields. So we group first name, last name together, city, state, zip, email address, preferred phone, all the payment information is grouped together. And so if you look at them side by side, the treatment asks for the same amount of information as the control, but the perception to me, the donors, gosh, it doesn't look as long. And I don't even think about that, guys. I mean, obviously your donors don't think about that either, but they perceive it, and that's the key in all of this stuff. It's not about like the reality, it's about the perception to the donor. And in our A/B split test, the treatment produced a 39.4% increase in donation conversion rate, a 39% increase in donations, 100% validity, statistical validity on this test. And this highlights a very critical thing. Friction doesn't exist on the page, it lives in the mind, right? We always say that we're not optimizing email campaigns, we're not optimizing landing pages, we're not optimizing microsites. What we're doing is we're optimizing the thought sequence, the thought sequences that lead to more yeses. And so, through that kind of lens, this idea of friction is something that's very much alive in the minds of people because they perceive it differently. Okay, let's look at another couple of experiments here, but before we do, let's look at this. So this is kind of interesting. So how does the amount and type of information that you request affect friction in say, a name capture form? So maybe let's shift our direction a little bit from, looking at donation pages. And, most of us are trying to actively grow our email file. We want to get, more and more people that we can cultivate and develop relationships with so that we can, one day perhaps have them as a financial partner. So if you have a form field and you're asking for lots of different pieces of information, well, I mean, that's obviously going to create more friction, but also the types of information we collect can have differing levels of anxiety and friction in the process. So something, if I ask for something like somebody's name, well, I mean, I'm not that nervous about giving out my name because I don't think that that's going to be, having emails show up in my inbox or having, my phone ring when I'm at dinner with my family. And certainly like things like phone number and social security number, address. I mean, there's various levels of friction and cost associated with giving up different pieces of information. And so one simple thing we can do is we can remove fields that that produce higher anxiety or produce greater friction in our forms. This is a very simple test. Just to highlight a simple point, the form on the left asks for first name, last name, email address, organization, phone number. The form on the right, first name, last name, email, and organization. So we've got rid of the phone number. And in the A/B split test, the version on the right produced a 51% increase in registration rate. And this is kind of interesting because it gives us the opportunity to leverage friction to help us shape what our goals are for list growth. Are we looking for greater number of names, or are we looking for a greater quality of our list, right? I mean, so we have these two different dials that we can spin. So let's look at this example here. Okay, we have got these two forms side by side. Now, one of the things that we can do is we can actually increase the quantity of names that we acquire by reducing the amounts of information that people have to give. This is one of the ways you can reduce friction on a form, is simply by taking things away. Conversely, if we want to have a much more qualified list, we might ask more questions, right? So we can actually turn up this quality dial, and we can add more fields to our form. Now that's going to probably get less people that complete the form, but the people that complete it will be giving us much more information, which will enable us to do much greater things in terms of segmentation and communication optimization. So that's just a kind of a visualization for you to think about, that you do have options. And friction, it can be a bad thing, but it also can be something that you can adjust based on what your specific goals are. So let's look at another experiment. This one is reducing friction on an email sign-up process. And this is actually kind of interesting because we measured the effect all the way through the funnel. And so let me kind of walk you through this. This is an experiment we did with our friends at Hillsdale College. This is their very popular Constitution 101 online course. This is the sign-up page for that online course. And this is a tremendous source of new leads and potential donors to the organization. And so this is kind of like the bottom of their funnel, if you will. This is kind of like the base, and then everything kind of grows up to the top. At the end of the sign-up opportunity, there is a giving opportunity. So once somebody completes the online registration process, they're presented with a value proposition for giving a gift to support these online courses and enable them to always be free. I mean, it's a wonderful program. And so the control has all of the form fields on one page: first name, last name, email, street address, city, state, and zip, postal code. So everything's required. You've got to fill out the whole Monty in order to gain access to the courses. And so in this treatment, we said, well, what if we could break this down into more digestible chunks? And this kind of follows a well-documented psychological principle called commitment building, meaning if you can get people to buy in at small levels, in small increments, you can ultimately, influence them to say, yes to bigger things down the road, okay? And so in this treatment, we broke apart the registration page into two steps. The first step is very simply just first name, last name, email address, and then you continue to the next step. And on the second step, it's city, state, zip, activate my course. So there's this two-step, and then again, afterwards, they're presented with an opportunity to give a gift. And so we did an A/B split test, the control, which is all the fields on one form. The treatment is breaking the form into two separate steps. And the treatment, here's what's interesting. We observed a 93.7% increase in donations, and we got there a couple ways. First of all, we had a 17.6% increase in email signups and a 9% increase in postal address signups. But the ultimate thing, which is interesting, and it kind of follows that principle of commitment building, is because we got people to agree to smaller things. Yes, I'll give you my name and email address. And then on the next step, yes, I'll give you my postal address. That after they got all the way through that registration process, they were more predisposed to accept our opportunity to become a financial partner of the organization. So very interesting, of how we can break this up into smaller pieces, can reduce friction, but also it can have downstream effects or upstream effects depending on how you want to look at your funnel. Let's look at one more, and then we're going to go right into the live op because I know we've got a lot of sites we want to look at today as a group here. And gosh, this is where we're really going to need your help and have you guys help to participate and help us optimize these pages. This one's very simple. This is an online donation page. The research partner is Jews for Jesus. This is a landing page as part of a monthly appeal. And so we just are focusing on the form here. And there's a number of different things that we observed. And again, every single experiment begins with a hypothesis, and that requires you to spend some time observing your pages and see what you can kind of look at and pull out of it. The first thing we noticed, well, gosh, we've got this login thing here. The donation array is great. I mean, we love donation arrays, but like it uses those radio buttons, and those things are pesky. They're always hard to get your little mouse to line up in the perfect little tiny 2-pixel hole to click in order to highlight it. There's other little things that are kind of spread throughout here. We have to sign up. There's like an email opt-in as you go through this process. And so we said, well, maybe some of these things can be, and the login thing is the big deal here. There's this option to log in and give your gift by logging in. And again, this kind of goes back to my argument about why that can be a bad thing. Is maybe people are clicking on that and then they're trying to log in and they can't remember their password, and then all of a sudden the phone's ringing and or the house is on fire and they've got to stop. So the control is got some issues with it. So the treatment we designed we kind of focus in on those different areas. We use these big buttons that we found to be very, very effective and at lifting it conversion, because very simply, it's easier for people to click. It reduces a little bit of the effort there. We removed, there was an option to like leave a comment. We said, well, that's something we can do later, maybe on the confirmation page or later in the communication cycle. We removed the login. That was the most important thing. We said, let's just offload that. Let's just see if it helps conversion by removing this idea of having to log into your account. And we removed the little email opt-in thing because that was a distraction. That's something we should have on a separate page. And so you can see the two pages here side by side, the controls on the left, the treatments on the right. And in our A-B split test, the treatment, this is kind of blew us away, 252% increase in revenue. And so, you know, the key thing here is by reducing these multiple different sources of friction, we're able to get a pretty big gain on this page by making it easier for people to give their gifts. And so I'm going to go ahead and have Jeff come up here and join me again. All these experiments, we're going to send these out like we do at the end of every single one of these live broadcasts, but you can go to the research library. It's research.nextafter.com. They're all in there. Feel free to explore them, download the slides, you know, share with your colleagues and friends, use them to convince your boss to allow you to test something. I mean, that's one of the main reasons we're putting this together, is to equip you with the ammunition you need to be able to do more testing and optimization. And we've got the, you know, the full creative sets and all the fun stuff's in there. I do want to, before we go to live op, I do want to remind everybody we are actually going to do another broadcast in August 24th. We're experimenting with the time a little bit. We usually do these things at over lunchtime here, but we're going to try one at the end of the day and see if that's you know, help us to get other people that aren't able to show up at lunchtime. On this particular broadcast, we're going to look at this online fundraising scorecard, which was a major study that we published last year, and it was really fascinating. We were able to kind of, you know, do this primary research study, but instead of interviewing people, we interviewed people's websites, right? So we went through each of these different websites, and we went through like the MEC Labs heuristics, and we scored everything from like the email sign-up process to the emails that came back to us, and then the donation process and thank you process and the cultivation process. So we got a lot of data back, and, you know, tons and tons of emails from subscribing to all these lists. And I'm going to be joined by Brad Davies, who's going to help lead that discussion. We're going to walk through some of the findings from there and how you can apply some of the learnings to your organization. Okay, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and get started with live optimization. Jeff is with me here too, and we're going to start looking at some pages. So just give us 1 second while we switch screens. We're going to pull up each of the different submissions that were sent in. And keep in mind, this is really the interactive portion of today's broadcast, if you will. So we're really going to need your help. That's the whole point of this. Go to that comment box. This is how we use that little, you know, comment or leave a question box. Use that to post your ideas as to how we can optimize these pages. So as we look at them, just feel free to go ahead and rapid fire as you have ideas. So let's look at the first one here. Jeff, tell us a little bit about this first page and who this comes from.
Yeah, so this one is from the University of Houston. Sent it in and wanted to get some ideas about how they could reduce friction here. So if you have thoughts based on the research that you just seen about how University of Houston can reduce friction, please go ahead and drop those into the Q&A box. We would love to see your thoughts as well. Tim, what do you think about this? It seems to me initially there's several layers of navigation.
Yeah, you know, this kind of highlights that whole unanticipated question. So go ahead and click on one of these fields here. So we have multiple different gift designations. Again, that could be a good thing, but, you know, if you're not really sure how you want to direct your gift, that could also produce some unnecessary friction. So that's one thing that jumps out to me.
There are a lot of these too, yeah.
That was one thing that jumps out to me right away.
Yeah, someone pointed out that it's odd that you have to select frequency first. You know, that's an interesting thing that we've actually done a good amount of testing on.
That's a great observation.
Answering the question, what is the best thing to ask for first? And what we found is that typically people want to choose the amount that they give first before they choose how often they give it. What else are we seeing here? People are saying to get rid of the top and left bar. So there's actually 3 top bars here. There's a super nav, is what most people call this, a big login button. We've also got this main navigation, then we've got the breadcrumbs down here, and then we've got this left sidebar. So there are a lot of opportunities to leave this page. If you're coming here, it's not what we call a cul-de-sac. It's actually got it's more like a highway intersection. There's a lot of things going on.
Yeah, every single additional link that you put on your donation page is a potential to pull the ripcord. So that's actually a great observation.
Someone else pointed out there are no suggested amounts or buttons or even an array, a radio array. It's interesting for different organizations. We've seen sometimes a blank field does work best, and maybe University of Houston has tested that and found that. Yeah, there don't seem to be very many suggested amounts or gift handles here. Yeah, so you did point out there's a Learn More link here that gives you valuable information, but it also increases the friction, because if you're not sure what this is, and then you click this, all of a sudden it pre-fills your amount up here. There's a lot of different things going on.
That's where the gift array comes in.
Yeah, these numbers are not. Someone pointed out these numbers are not in order. They're not in numerical order.
They may have tested them.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. So there's no. There's a whole lot going on in this page.
Keep scrolling down the page, Jeff. Let's see if there's anything else. So we've got lots of form fields, title. Looks like they're grouped together, so that's a good thing, right? We've got first name next to middle name and last name, suffix, and so that's actually a positive thing here. Matching gifts. Now this is interesting. So we obviously love it when we can multiply the impact of our gift. But this is something I would very much recommend that this is something that you test, because we have found that some matching programs, they require you to go off-site to a different website. I don't know if this is a link here, matching gifts program. Yeah, that takes you off-site. So that could be again another thing that somebody says, oh, that's kind of neat, that's a great idea, and then they go through this process and they kind of forgot what they got there for in the first place.
An interesting thing, we just had a question about this right here, memoriam and honor gifts, in memoriam gifts. They asked, if that's an effective thing. So anytime you ask for information in the donation process, you're lengthening the process. It's causing potential friction. Gifts in memory or in honor of are a way that a lot of people like to give. The real question that we ask, and this is the same thing with the matching gifts, it's the same thing with business information, it's the same thing with planned giving. The main thing that we're trying to ask is this the right time to ask this? Can we go ahead and complete the transaction and ask that on a secondary screen? Now we may get fewer people who fill that out, but the ones who are motivated to will. So that's really the big question is.
This is a great one here. Time? Date of birth and spouse's name, not necessary fields. Excellent. Thank you, Roger. Great. That's excellent.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really good. We had someone else. Have you found that most online donors know how to use the autofill feature of the browser? Hopefully this won't reveal like my credit card information. But actually, this page, I'm trying to double click here, and it actually won't autofill. So that's something that may be maybe a feature that they want to exploit. Someone else asked if there's data about friction caused from having date of birth on the giving form.
Yeah, I mean that seems a little too personal for me. Especially if I'm just giving a gift online. I don't know if I need to give that to you right now. Like, how are you going to use that information?
Let's get to know each other first.
Maybe you're going to send me a birthday card, but I don't know. That's a little.
This is really good stuff, and I think our friend Peter here summed it up. He said, "This is just a lot of stuff. I'm a first-time donor," and that's a good way to break that down. So it's hard because we have different personas. We have people coming back to this page who have been long-time donors. We have people who are major donors coming to this page. We have people who are first-time donors, and so we've got to simplify. You don't always have to play to the lowest common denominator. Maybe you can give people specific links if you have their information, but we need to simplify the experience. For the person who might be a first-time donor. Awesome. So thank you so much for sending in this University of Houston page. By the way, all of these were sent in. We didn't just pick a bunch of random pages to burn on the internet. The next one we're going to pull up, the Center for Public Integrity. And Tim, there's a lot to like about this page.
Yeah, there's a lot. When we first looked at this, I was impressed. I mean, we've got a really strong value proposition right there, front and center. The two-column layout is something that we've used for many years. We have moved away from that. We found that people, the scrolling thing, the whole above the fold thing is kind of something that doesn't. It's not a real anxiety online. It's easier for people to scroll than having to kind of go down, read one column, and go back to the other. So I'd say that the biggest thing that I observe here is kind of it's a little bit of an iPath problem. I have to skip over the donation form, and I have to skip over to that to read this copy that it helps me understand why I should give a gift, and then I have to go back over to the form and complete my donation. It's a little bit disjointed, and it's a little bit out of sequence, is what we would say.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, if you're, please chime in, give us your comments if you have thoughts about this. This is one thing I noticed here, Tim. I think this is meant to, this section right here is meant to show a progress here, but it's kind of interesting. Like, I'm not really sure what this means. This is a great matching offer. We've seen those be very helpful. So we noticed this one thing. So when you click a number, so I'm going to select $25 here. Instantly, what happens? There's good things and bad things about this. I don't really know. I mean, I really don't know if this is better. So I selected to give a one-time $25 gift, and it instantly switches to make a recurring gift ask. So for just $3 a month, you could increase your support of investigative journalism by almost 50% a year compared to giving $25 once. So it's asking me to give $36 a year rather than $25.
And excellent, guys. If you're paying attention, this is an excellent value proposition for recurring giving. So kudos and hats off to that. The only question is, does that kind of, if I've clicked 25, is that derailing me a little bit and adding this, a little bit of confusion, some decision friction, and maybe that's okay. Maybe it's worth it. So that'd probably be an interesting thing to experiment and test with.
Yeah. So Jackie, who submitted this, thank you first of all for submitting, and secondly, I'd love to hear about this. This is kind of fascinating. We've done a lot of testing with asking for a recurring gift after the gift is made, and so it's like a follow-on ask, a secondary ask, if you will, a serial ask. But I've never tried it. We've never tested that actually within the process of the first donation.
Here's an interesting feedback from some of the people on the panel here. Are the read more links? So, Jeff, there's all these read more links on the side here. Do they open in a new window?
They do.
And they do. Okay, so that's good. Let's go back to the page. So that may add some friction. Obviously, every additional link we add there, but at least they're trying to overcome that by opening it in the same window so you can get back.
Yeah, and so do these Charity Navigator and GuideStar windows. So if I choose to give $25 one time, so this is interesting. So it's asking me for, we're now to the personal information field, and it's asking me for personal information. It's split it, which we saw in that Hillsdale. Sometimes layering the amount of information can actually increase conversion. Now, this is interesting, though. Right here, it's asking me to subscribe me to the center's email newsletter, something common, but it asks some stuff that I'm not really sure about if I'm a first-time donor. Like, I'm not sure which stories I want. I'm not sure. This is a decision that I don't know how to make at this point. So just a curious point. We did. Let's go back. Someone did point out this is maybe just be an error. There are $250 buttons that may be a $500 button is what it means to. What it intends to do, it actually makes it $50. So that's $450 in lost revenue. Someone also asked this question, Tim. If you have two columns, would you prefer to have the donation form on the right or the left?
Well, we've tested this a lot, and what we've concluded is that actually more vertical alignment on the donation page is tends to do better, because people can scan through copy if they don't need to read it. But it enables a very simple and streamlined kind of iPath that goes straight from the top to down. Because we've got a little action to be able to move our mouse up and down. It's a lot harder to kind of go up and then come back down and go over. And so we found that is helpful. But I would test it. I mean, honestly, it does vary by organization, by donor group. I mean, that's the key.
So cool. Thank you, Jackie, for sending in the Center for Public Integrity's donation page. Clicking over to the next one, Tim, we want to move through as many of these as we can. Casey Trees, an organization in Washington, D.C. that plants trees. Thank you, Allison, for sending this in. Tim, what are your first thoughts here?
Well, very large image. It, obviously kind of unites to what it is they do, so I get a sense of, what the impact of my gift would be. And as I kind of look at this, obviously we've got all the navigation issues that we covered on some of the other some of the other pages. So one thing might be to get rid of all the other, navigation elements and just make it more of a kind of a cul-de-sac page, I think is the word that you used. We've got some other links and an email address of somebody I can contact if I prefer to get my gift by mail. So I mean that's a little bit weird, this part in the process. I mean, if I'm wanting if I'm clicking the donate button online, I'm probably going down that motivation path.
Yeah, folks, by the way, if you see things on this page, this Casey Trees page that you think might be able to be optimized or tested, drop them into the Q&A box. We'd love to hear from you as well. The funny thing about this, Tim, is we're not experts. There's actually no such thing as a marketing expert. There's only experienced testers and people who know how to look for what to test. Yeah, it's interesting. Let's scroll down here and look at a little bit of this. So it's got a pre-selected amount, which is something that we've seen improve conversion, helping people make a decision when they have a lot of different options here.
I'd maybe test buttons as opposed to radios. So,
yeah, especially as a lot of folks go to mobile devices, they're a lot easier to fill there. We've got a couple of things here, like asking to automatically repeat the gift, make it anonymous, make it in someone else's name, make it a commemorative gift, which actually takes you to a different page. That's really interesting there. Let's see, we got someone asked, how does one give anonymously but still provide mailing information? That's an interesting question. Not clear what the comments field means, just comments. It may be helpful to prompt or to ask a question. Someone asked if there's any difference. Oh, this is interesting. Any difference in using the words donate or give or support? Tim, have you found anything in research?
What we found is that donation is the most commonly understood term by donors universally. So, give and gift is probably second, but that really kind of varies by different vertical of organization from, based on some of the research and testing that we've done.
Yeah, someone else just pointed out down here at the bottom, this is helpful. Someone pointed out that this may cause friction, saying you will receive periodic updates and not giving them a checkbox for an option. I'm not sure that may be something they've tested. Someone else also pointed out that the button here is in the bottom. It's out of the iPad. It's in the bottom right side, and it also just says process. The button copy is very interesting because generally on 90% of buttons out there we see one word, and that word is submit, which is submit to our marketing overlords. This one says process, but what's actually in the iPad is cancel, which is what we don't want them to do. So I would wonder if testing this might improve conversion, swapping those. We also have some folks from the panel. Get rid of the cancel button.
That's true.
Then the hierarchy of giving amounts. What's the best to begin with? The highest amount or the lowest amount? That's very interesting.
Somebody said get rid of the decimal points. That can actually create a lot of kind of friction. Your eye.
Visual
got
friction.
$1 million? I just look at it at first glance. It's great. Good comment there.
Rachel said she'd love to hear our thoughts on dollar signs in ask amounts. From a behavioral sciences perspective, she's heard they make people choose smaller amounts. That's why a lot of restaurant menus stopped using them, but still most nonprofits use them. Is there any research on that you've seen, Tim?
Well, that's one of the things we found when we started moving away from radios and moving over to buttons is we dropped the decimal points, and we found that was much obviously much more effective and easy. And the interesting thing is we don't even understand all the reasons why, but we found that is in fact more effective.
Yeah, Rachel also pointed out there are 6 gift amounts here, and if we can narrow that down, we can actually reduce the decision friction there.
Somebody said, what is this comments thing all about? Like, what do I need to do with the comments? Maybe that's something that could be offloaded to perhaps a confirmation page. And by the way, that's something that's very interesting. We haven't seen a lot of people test this, especially with gift designations. Why is it that we can't offload that to the confirmation page? After somebody goes through the process, they select the amount, they go and complete the transaction, why not let them there go and personalize their gift? And I think that would be an interesting thing to test as well.
Cool. We've got just a couple minutes left, so we are going to move on and jump over to this final one. If you submitted a landing page and we didn't get to it today, we'd love to follow up with you the best we can. We'll also keep those landing pages for our next live optimization session. We continue to roll through some of these actually from our last submission. So this last one you're going to see, this is the AIDS Foundation of Chicago. Kind Thank you, Hannah, for sending this in. So anybody have any thoughts on this? Use the Q&A button. A couple things I see. This actually has interesting, and they're not horizontal menus at the top. They're vertical menus here over to the side, which pushes this page to the right. I see they're asking me to donate twice. This is probably the title of the page, and this is probably the copy in the page. There's some good value proposition stuff here. Like I love this. Like it's telling me exactly what my gift is going to do. It's showing success results. Like people want to donate to something they feel like is making an impact.
But I would move the donation amounts below that, right? Because if you think about it, I'm going to make my decision about how much I'm going to give based on my understanding and interpretation of the value proposition. And I get the value proposition after I've already selected my gift amount. That doesn't help you.
Yeah, and I think what this is, Tim, is actually, it's kind of interesting because it's a combination donate page where you're getting information on donation, but also you can start the process here because there's a couple other options for about annual giving circles or monthly giving. So if I click $100, it's going to take me to this donation page, which I'd actually love to see. If people are being directed right here, be able to see if there's value proposition language that can bolster this claim that I can make a difference. Well, how can I make a difference? You actually said that on the previous page, but I'd love to be reminded of that here. This is interesting. Someone pointed out, that there's. You selected your amount. It's pre-filled here, but you can also change it. That could actually relieve friction if you accidentally click the wrong amount. That you don't have to go back and then back forward.
Let me say, our work is not done. What does that look like? What does that mean? So that's actually interesting, and that points to another source of friction, which is confusion.
Yep.
Clarity trumps persuasion. We don't have to come up with these cool gimmicky little taglines. What we have to do is we have to communicate clearly the impact of a donor's gift and how that's going to make a difference, and help that donor to understand that this is what they're doing, like the natural decision that they're making is a right one, right? We're trying to reinforce that visceral response.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone pointed out this bar down at the bottom that seems to be site-wide and may want to be removed from here because it's got a lot of links away. It says, what can we do for you? Which is actually, putting that on the donation process may not be the point where we want to ask somebody that. I'd love a little more information here about allies, advocates, and leadership circle. Like, names and gift handles and clubs like that are great, but we also want people to understand what the difference in them are. So this gets back to something we saw earlier, the honor and memorial information. Very, very interesting.
All the form fields are vertical. Horizontal, group those.
Yeah, middle name, not sure if that's necessary, but if it's not required, then we can at least test pulling that out. And then remember me, I guess this is going to save, this is actually a big thing among people now is online security. And so like, remember me, are you saving my credit card information? Like what's actually being saved? Is this a cookie that pre-fills my information when I come back? So these questions there, the rest of it is actually it's pretty straightforward in terms of giving a gift. So there seems to be, like you said, a lot of form layout, opportunity for optimization and things to test here. And then, again, several people have commented that they're confused about, supporting 42,000 clients or how do we know that the work is done? So the value proposition is actually, while in some places it might actually increase clarity, this is actually maybe need some testing to see if we can make it actually clearer to people what the work that is being done is and how it can actually be effectively ended with their gift. Well, cool. Thanks everybody for joining us. I wanted to remind you that after this, after I hit end meeting here, we're going to send you to be able to register for our very next broadcast, which is August 24th. We're testing a different time. We like to test everything. It's 3 p.m. Central, so it's later in the afternoon. Hopefully can break up that glut of meetings you have on a Monday afternoon. But you'll be taken right to that page where you can register. Tim and Brad are going to present the online fundraising scorecard.
Yeah, and we'll look forward to that. But everybody, thank you so much for submitting your pages. If we did not get to your page today, will you please just reach out to us directly? Just send an email back to whatever response you got, or even just to the email invite for the webinar, and we'll be happy to talk with you offline about some ways that you can optimize your page. Because ultimately we want you guys to get some lifts on your page, and I want I'd love to hear if you guys do test some of these things that we talked about today. We want to hear from you. We've got just this desire to continue to grow our body of research, and we want to learn from you as much as hopefully you're able to learn from us.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to hello@nextafter.com if you submitted your landing page. We didn't get to it. There were several that we wanted to get to today, but weren't able to make it with time. Again, we're going to send the recording out of this as well as links to all of the case studies you saw just a little later on today. And thank you so much for joining us. Hope you've gotten some ideas to go out and start testing how you can reduce and eliminate friction in your donation process. Thanks, y'all. Have a great afternoon.